Christmas time, so she was driving home to Nebraska from Utah, and which is like a long straight drive through cornfields. She fell asleep at the wheel. One of my friends was in the front seat with her, and she rolled the car into a ditch in the dream. I saw the license plate number. I'd never seen the car before. Mm-hmm. I saw the license plate number. I saw blood covering her and the other guy, and I saw that he broke his neck. And I was so worried about it. And as a missionary, we were not allowed to call home. You couldn't call home. That was sort of the whole thing. Like, you're there for, it's like you're in a monastery, you know, unless you're going to leave, they're not going to do anything. And I wasn't going to leave. So I called the mission president and I said, I'd like to call home and kind of like, and I don't know if this has happened or not. And he's thinking, oh, this kid might just be crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't call home. And I found out about a week later, because they didn't want to tell me on Christmas Day, they sent me a letter, that the same exact thing happened 9 hours after the dream. Wow. So it was like exactly down to the license plate on the car. And the car I'd never seen before. And the guy died. And
so what is that? Is that because that was a dream, though?
That was a dream.
That was a dream. So is dreaming a form of quantum jumping?
Yes, it can be.
It can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
because dreams can be connecting your subconscious, right? It's from your subconscious. Right. And your subconscious is where you're closest to your oversoul, right? That's where, and so the way that the oversoul can communicate with us is through synchronicities and through dreams. That's one of the most common ways, until we learn how to master the balance that's necessary, because we have to be able to achieve a high degree of hemisynchronization of our two left and right brains, which is really the alpha and omega. And once that happens, then the chi comes in. And what is the chi? The chi is the optic nerve that connects the right eye to the left brain and the left eye to the right brain. It crosses over at the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland, this is called the optic chiasm. Right. And then it connects back to the occipital lobe, right? So what we're seeing inside of our brain, there's no photons in there. We're just doing an interpretation from what's coming into our retinal receptors of what photons it would be picking up. Then flipping the image upside down, because for us, if we actually could see what we're truly seeing, it's an upside down image, just like a camera, right, would be. And then it's getting interpolated. There's no photons in my head, right, that you would think. Right? There are that are just from the ambient molecules and the and you know the electrons that are inside my brain, right, or the elements that are inside my brain that make it up. But basically, we are doing an interpolation of a matrix simulation already inside of our brains. It's just happening in the back of our brains. So when we finally find this balance, then we get into this what's called heart-brain coherence. The heart-brain coherence is what mystics, what Sri Yukteswar, what all the Babaji, all of these guys became masters at. They learned how to balance their feminine energy with their masculine energy and bring them so that they're no longer in conflict one with another. And it even comes down to the point where you have to finally realize, you know what, maybe my rational mind will never fully grasp my irrational mind, but it can value it, right? Like, I may never fully understand the reason for irrationality, but look, I do love the curve. The curve is something I've been eternally fascinated by. It's like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like life would be boring with only straight lines. Right. So I've learned to value that, and so therefore, the feminine aspect that might seem totally emotional to the left brain has an incredible value in intuition. It allows people that have the balance to think and feel at the same time. And when the heart thinks and the mind feels, that's when the river of wisdom flows. And that river of wisdom is your Kundalini life force. So this is when it starts to light up your chakras, right? And this is all the stuff I know you've studied because I know all the books you've read, right? But this is just maybe a different way of looking at it. I came at it more from the Western esoterica than from the Eastern. And then I went back and studied Eastern. But it's still the same thing. Hermetic wisdom is the same as Eastern. You have Hermetic alchemists that were in China as well. They're all doing the same thing. It's learning how to transmute the metaphor of lead into gold. And that metaphor is taking the negative experience of our suffering, and once we finally have the context of the meaning behind the suffering, and it makes us more divine, and it also makes the one even more aware of itself, because it's dividing itself into all of our eyes of perception so that it can perceive itself through our unique eyes of perception. nobody with my eyes has ever seen the world before, and no one will ever see it again because I have a unique parentage, I have a unique conditioning bias set, I have a unique, environmental factors, I have a unique world. This play stage that we have this background of, we all have like one big oversoul. And humanity, I believe, is represented by Orion constellation. And it's the story of the hero's journey. Orion is the hero. We're all in our own hero's journey. That oversoul has many names. We could say it's Yahweh for some, the lesser Yahweh for others, Metatron for some, Thoth. I mean, you can go to a whole list of different names that this could be. Something there's 108 names, something there's 72 names. They're all the same because there's only one thing. There's you in your experience and your you inverse around you. It's just divided light so that it can perceive itself. And then we finally learn our oneness and we come back together as one. And that's also joy for Source Creator.
So the idea of the quantum jumping, to be able to go back and forth, do you believe that, because a lot of times people talk about aliens and those kind of interactions. What's your experience with that? Have you had any experience with, not only, because UFOs are now becoming a very mainstream, everyone's talking about them, but even in the past, from the Anunnaki to all these kind of things, what kind of experience do you have in that, or stories have you heard?
I don't believe the Anunnaki were one race of aliens, right? You could say it was like a consortium, a bunch of different alien species. And what is alien? I don't like the word alien. You could call them extraterrestrial or intraterrestrial. I believe they've been here all along. It's not a function of whether or not these so-called aliens or extraterrestrials or intraterrestrials are here or not. They're always here. The only question is humanity in a cycle where we are allowed access through higher dimensional perspectives to be able to perceive them?
If you're enjoying this conversation, I invite you to go deeper down the rabbit hole with me on Next Level Soul TV.